And we are back with another episode of From the Raptors. Sam and I are here recording on a Friday before the Celtics take on the Clippers, and we have guest Chris Forsberg from NBC Sports Boston. How you doing today, Chris?
What's up, y'all? I'm still marveling. Before you hit record, I put you on the spot and I said you have a Rob Williams jersey in the background there, and I'm
Yeah,
now fascinated.
I
I did not.
do.
Where do you get a Rob Williams jersey?
All right. Well, the Celtics fan in me will say get it, customized on the Celtics.com/shop, but I got it from China and dhgate.com because I am broke. So that's the honest answer for you. dhgate.com, I believe. A
Oh,
little
yeah,
shout
okay,
out.
no, I've heard of them.
No,
I've had a
yeah.
lot. I think when Reddit people were looking for jerseys, I see that pop up all the time. So, uh, well, look,
Yeah.
I mean, any way you can get a Time Lord jersey, I'm all for it.
Exactly, exactly. It was like $20 too, so it's
I
pretty
might order one now. Like I'm just saying.
exactly pretty good value. You're right. So, but yeah, Celtics on a West Coast trip at the moment. They just took on the Golden State Warriors. Got to win. Unfortunately, weren't able to bring it home against the Sacramento Kings. And I wanted to ask you about that because it seemed like they just kept letting the Kings back into it. Like they had a good grasp on the game. Brad Stevens mentioned after the game that they played hard, but they weren't able to come away with it. What did you see as the biggest issue in that game?
I thought their fourth quarter defense was pretty bad, and that's sort of unfortunately been a theme a little bit for them in terms of not being able to sort of close out games lately. At the start of the year, they were winning a lot of close games, and so that's concerning to me. And like, look, they didn't have everybody. They didn't have Kemba. They didn't have Marcus Smart. They didn't have Peyton Pritchard. They were thin on ball handlers. All that being said, all due respect to the Kings, it's the Kings and they're a young team with some nice pieces, but that's a game you should win. So they just got to get a little bit better in those situations, and I would have liked to seen the younger guys sort of grasp that moment, but it didn't happen. And so the Celtics are they got to figure out how to just bring that defensive intensity that we've seen in years past in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, they don't have it at all. They've lost numerous games this season because of the fourth quarter defense. And the most frustrating part about that loss is that they actually figured it out on offense and they were getting the scores they needed. They couldn't buy a stop. The only stop they got was the De'Aaron Fox three that didn't hit the rim with 10 seconds left.
Mhm.
And that was like pretty lucky, to be honest, because if that hits the rim, they don't get the stop.
Yeah, and again, like I mean, even Tatum gets the 3-point look, off the Grant Williams missed free throw. It's just a little bit maddening that there are instances where they shouldn't put themselves in a position to have to be scrambling to win that game. You got to be able to lean on your defense. Once they get to the playoffs, it's going to be so much more difficult. The opponents are so much better. I just want to see them tighten up there, and I think they will. I think we've seen glimpses of it, even against the Lakers. That defense looked really good. They just going to be a little bit crisper and a little bit healthier.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be a blessing for sure. But all season long, the stats say it. You can see it with the eye test. The Celtics in the fourth quarter have just not been the same team that we're so used to seeing. Obviously, Isaiah Thomas even going back that far. And last season in the playoffs, it was the whole meme where, oh, third quarter Celtics, here they are again to blow another lead. But this year, they're a decent team in the third, and then just in the fourth, they crumble. And Sam, you mentioned that, they figured it out on offense, but the defense wasn't there, and it's always one or the other. So, what do you think the issue is in the fourth this year? Is it just a mentality thing, or what's going on?
So, I don't know. That's a good question. I think good teams sort of turn it up a notch at that point. And so I think it's fair to say it's a little bit mental. I will give them the benefit of the doubt and say there's been so much lineup uncertainty that maybe they don't know, okay, who's your five at the end of the game? And are they healthy enough to be out there? It's a lot easier to dig in when you have Marcus Smart out there, when you know Tristan Thompson can be in that situation. Thought it was odd that Brad didn't go back to Tristan, considering how well he played in that situation. So I think they're just still figuring that out, and that will come. You'll know who your five are at the end of games, whether that's Tice, maybe they go offense, defense. I don't know. Maybe it changes because whatever they do with this traded player exception, and is there a player that you want on the floor in that situation? So I give them the benefit of the doubt, but you look at it consistently, the best teams in the league are the ones that know how to tighten up in that moment. And right now, as good as the Celtics were at the start of the year, and some of that was luck, like just think back and Tatum banking in the three against Milwaukee, it wasn't like they were just like taking it to another level at times in the
Mhm,
fourth quarter. Sometimes you get a good bounce, but I do think they'll get there. It's just going to take some time.
mhm.
It's funny you mentioned the Milwaukee game. Like they were up 17 points at the beginning of that fourth quarter.
Yeah.
So that we should have seen it from square one that it might be an issue.
Yeah. Oh man, it's
What's
just
next, Jack?
it's
What you got?
maddening. It's maddening. I know, Chris, you brought up Tristan Thompson having a great stretch right now. Obviously, he had his struggles mid-season, and everyone thought, okay, now it's Tice's turn. It's just kind of flipping back and forth between those two who he thinks going to be the better center. What do you see Brad Stevens going with moving forward? Is it gonna be that same flip flop based on matchup, or what do you think the Celtics should do about that center position?
So besides play Time Lord more, I do think
Exactly.
that Tice has good chemistry with that first group, and you can see the value of being around that group last year. I thought as soon as Kemba came back, all of a sudden he's like throwing lobs to Tice, and it just looked really comfortable and a really good fit. So I think he's got the slight edge, at least for now. But like this has been a good trip for Tristan. We're starting to see a little bit more of him being aggressive on the offensive end, bullying around the basket. You know, I've been critical of his defense because the numbers have been terrible this year. There are instances where he's given up points, and you're just like, it was a good contest. I'm trying to think of, who was it? DeRozan down in San Antonio when he hit that game winner over him. Like Thompson played defense well there and forced him into a tough shot. DeRozan just made a good pull up, but I do think he needs to tighten up a little bit in terms of, you're going to ask him to defend Giannis and Embiid, and can you trust Tristan Thompson in those situations? He's never been exactly an Embiid stopper or anything like that, but he does have to give you that Ennis Cantor like physicality, which is crazy to say because Ennis's calling card certainly wasn't defense, but um, you know, look, that's what they're going to need in that situation. Whoever is able to do that most consistently will get the time. But I do think Tice has good chemistry right now with that group, and so I like him in that starting lineup. It should motivate Tristan to be there and want to be the guy that they lean on at the end of games.
Oh yeah, for sure. And you bring up Cantor. Cantor had a game last
I
night.
mean, I don't mean to bring up a sore subject. Like $5 million a year, you could have had him back for, and now you're thinking, well, it's easy to second guess the decisions in the aftermath. But I mean, selfishly, I like Dennis, and got to do the podcast with him and all that. And he was but I think the Celtics were hopeful that they needed to create more time for Robert Williams. I think they thought they'd be able to lean a lot heavier on Grant Williams at the start of this year, and he's been a little bit up and down. So it just comes back to it. You gotta. I hope those guys learn because of the minutes they're getting. But Tristan was brought in to be that guy, and they paid big money to get him here. So he's really got to own it, and I think he's starting to move in a better direction.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was starting to get worried he was going to fall into the Cantor role where they did bring him in, and then like Brad was like, "Well, this guy just kind of doesn't fit, so we're just going to play the guys we have," which had been fine because Tice has been balling out. It's like he gets better every single year. Like everyone always expects him to fall out of the rotation. He's like, "No, I'm still here, man. Like I'm going to start drilling threes now every time I shoot," which has been great. And Robert Williams, like we've talked about already, has been a monster, and I think he hasn't been playing a lot lately just after COVID because they're trying to get him back up to speed still, maybe. I do hope they give him more minutes, though. He's been excellent. And he's a difference maker, too. He brings energy.
Yeah, for sure. Every time Rob checks into the game, it's kind of like he jumps over the entire team to get the rebound. He hustles. It's wild. I don't get it, and it does frustrate me when Brad Stevens doesn't play him as much. But I guess what Sam you said makes sense. Maybe it is that COVID. Maybe you're trying to get him back fully healthy. But hopefully we'll see him some point soon. Um, Something else I wanted to bring up. I know we kind of touched on the topic of consistency on offense and defense this season, and it's just not there at all. Is what I'm trying to say. Like fourth quarter, you fall apart. Third quarter, you're fine. First quarter, you're good. Second quarter, it's just this complete just inconsistency that the Celtics has this year. And I think I asked you a similar thing with the fourth quarter, but why is it that they decide that okay, when Tatum's in the lineup, this game will play better, but when he's out, we'll play bad, or when Tatum's out of the lineup, we'll play better this game, and when he's in, we'll play bad. Like I don't get that mentality. Like what's going on?
Yeah, so I think it honestly comes down to like they're really good with Jason Tatum and they're really bad without Jason Tatum. And as good as Jalen Brown has been, the numbers have sort of borne out over the past couple of years that it's Tatum that decides like how good this team's going to be. And some of that is just how much attention he draws. Some of that is he's underrated defensively because of his length and how much he means to that side of the basketball. But yeah, the team definitely has trouble keeping itself afloat when Tatum is either out during that COVID stretch or just on the bench for those few minute breaks. So that I think getting Kemba back now, and I think Kemba's still in a weird spot because he's not playing his normal minutes. There's like an extra probably 6 minutes and a half where he's sitting on the bench, or an extra 3 minutes per half, and so maybe that would help manage a stretch. I think he's got to be super aggressive when he's in there, especially when Tatum or Brown are not in there. Although I think they'll always have like one or two of those guys on the court. Having those guys healthy and being able to be out there will eliminate some of the lulls and the inconsistencies. But they're still trying to figure that out. And part of me says, well, Brad, I wish you'd just pick your rotation and go with it. On the other hand, like I sort of thought a lot of this early part of the season would be earmarked for player development. And I'm the one screaming at my TV, like, why isn't Aaron Neesmith playing more? Because I just want to see if they can
Yeah.
get more out of him and like let him learn on the fly. Like, how else are these guys going to develop? I think that's part of the problem that Rob has had. And now some of that's injuries, but unless you're getting consistent time, you're not going to develop. And we're left in these glimpses and we're saying, okay, as soon as he makes his first defensive mistake, Brad's quick to pull him out. It's the perils of a championship caliber team, but I'm okay with inconsistency as long as it's at the benefit of development. I don't think you've accomplished either at times this season.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think Brad's always in the lab per se. At the beginning of the season, he loves experimenting with his lineups, but he has a tough task, especially with the centers and Robert Williams. You've got three solid centers when Thompson's playing well, and you have to figure out how to balance those guys. And it is tough because at least Thompson and Time Lord, they've got similar play styles. Tice, you can at least have him stretch the floor a little bit, but like you can't have Thompson and Time Lord on the floor at the same time. You're just going to have no spacing. And then as far as rotating Kemba back into the lineup, I think he's struggling with that too because they're trying to figure out, all right, well, where's Kemba's role going to be? He's so used to being number one that he has to learn how to be number two or number three sometimes. He might be struggling with that. And one theory I have about Kemba's struggles is like we've noticed like he'll come out hot sometimes. Like he'll come out and have a great first half. He falls off. I think he's still getting his footing back. Like he might be getting fatigued at the end of the game. Might be why he's not performing well.
What do you think about that, Chris? What is your theory about Kemba?
Yeah, I think, he came back and we all sort of said, oh, look, he looks like the old Kemba. He's got his explosion. I think there's a little bit of extra adrenaline going in that situation, and he's probably a little hyped up to be out there. And then he went into that little bit of a funk where 3-point shot defied him. And I just think that's natural. Like, guys come back, they look really good. Then all of a sudden they sort of regress. And I just think he's trying to find that balance. I think it goes back to the minutes too. He was having some odd rotations where play the first 6 minutes, and then he's out till maybe the last few minutes of the second quarter, or would come back in the early second quarter but wouldn't play the end. And so it's just not as consistent. I think guys like, being on a pattern, knowing when they're going in and how to conserve their energy in those moments, or the lull there at the start where like they were clearly saving him for crunch time, but you had to get there, and it's like it felt like maybe it got a little cold in that instance. So I hope some of that is mitigated when you're on a normal schedule. I don't know when that will quite be. Like, he's closer to 28, 30 minutes now. And, I don't expect it's not like he played a ton of minutes last year. I think 32 was probably about where he topped out. So I think that would be the case. And, again, it's just kind of getting comfortable, remembering where you can be aggressive. I think when they first came back, a lot of the guys were like, hey, Kemba, go be you. And Kemba was sort of like, well, now I've got to learn how to defer to Jason and Jalen. So they're just figuring that out. But I did think they'd find that out west. I thought that this trip would be when they kind of all clicked. That's why, Kemba's sitting out that second night of a back-to-back. Now my eyes turn to tonight, where, okay, against a really good opponent, and hopefully, we're sitting here waiting to find out if Jalen's going to be out there with this sore left knee. Is this the time where you can figure it out? And if Jalen's not out there, that's when you especially need super aggressive Kemba to come back.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, Kings the other night, Clippers tonight. And Sam, what do you always say about the Celtics and what they do against
Oh,
competition?
they play to the level of their competition, regardless if it's good or bad. Like tonight, if Jaylen Brown is going to play, like you're going to see an incredible game probably. Whether they win or lose, it might be one of those game of the year type games they had last year against the Clippers. Too bad the Clippers couldn't. Neither of the teams could make the finals. Huh? That would have been a fire series for finals. But like I think they always play a good game against the Clippers. I think they match up well with them, and the Clippers, vice versa. Kawhi and Paul George will guard the Jays. It's an exciting matchup, and I hope Jalen's healthy. I'm sick of seeing guys be out on the sideline, and also I hope Peyton Pritchard's back.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a nice development. What do you think the keys are tonight against the Clips? Do you? And also, second to that, Chris, why do they play to the level of their competition? You'll see a close game against the Kings and then the Clippers the next night. What's the deal with that?
Yeah, I think that's probably a trap that a lot of good teams fall into. I guess the best teams don't, right? Like that they bring the same consistency every night. But I just think in general, The Celtics, like anybody, they get hyped up for a better opponent. You look at the Clippers' record, and it's easier to get hyped up for them than it is to say against a 500 or sub 500 Kings team, which isn't fair because De'Aaron Fox is playing out of control. Halliburton looks awesome. Like, you got to find a way to bring that energy every night. But I agree. I think they'll play well tonight. Every time I think about the West Coast trip, they always struggle in Sacramento. They always struggle in Phoenix. Like, it really does come down to they don't bring the same level of intensity as they do against the Lakers, the Clippers, play the Jazz pretty well. Don't feel like they play well in Portland ever. But so I don't know. Maybe it's just mental thing, like you guys said on that trip, where they've got to sort of ratchet it up. But just in general, I think they got to look at their record. And Jalen got asked about it the other night. You're at 11-9. How do you feel about that? And he's like, we're 11-9. They don't feel great about that. They started really well. They won a lot of close games, sort of padded that record a little bit. And now, I think they've lost what? If I can do the math, they've lost 5 of 7, won 6 of, so 6 of 8 they've lost. It's
not great.
Yeah, no, or 6 of 9.
Not great.
So so they got to be better. They have even with injuries and with all they're going through, they're better than the record indicates over the past few weeks. And yet, there's not a lot of wins over good teams. So they've got to turn it up.
For sure. And like I said, the injuries don't help for sure. Peyton Pritchard being out for so long is, I think, a really underrated aspect because he was bringing so much even as a rookie.
Yeah.
And now Marcus Smart's out with that injury. So that leaves a lot of the point guard minutes to our main man, Jeff Teague, or DeMarco 0055, whatever you want to call it. But before we talk about Jeff Teague play, that can't be Jeff Teague, right? That's just a fan trying to make a joke. Like,
it better not be. Like, if someone's created a burner that was so obviously tied to your player, like, I made this joke yesterday. We were talking about it on our podcast, and I said, if I was making a burner, I would have just put my middle name and TV guy, NBC. I don't, it's just a little too obvious. Too many identifiers in there. But what I love is that the person really leaned into the idea of trying to spoof it in terms of saying someone was like, well, if you want to prove you're not Jeff Teague, just tweet during the game. He's like, yo, man, I 10 bar. I can't be on my phone at night. And I'm thinking, well, bars are shut down. I don't know where you're slinging bar right now,
yeah.
but I do like that. I do like that there's someone that's so big of a Jeff Teague fan that they're willing to really dig in and go to bat for a guy that's shooting under 30% on all 2-point shots. So, look, find yourself someone in your life who loves you as much as this guy pretending to be Jeff Teague's burner.
Oh man, it's hilarious. He's got 2,000 followers now too. He's
blowing
really?
Up
because of it. Yeah. He's got. I need to double check those statistics, but yeah.
Me and Jack have been at Twitter for a couple of years now. We got a little over 1,000 apiece.
He follows 11 people, and he has 2,160 followers on Twitter.
That's amazing. He might have more followers than Jeff Teague at this point.
Oh my god!
I almost feel bad for Jeff Teague because he wasn't bad at the beginning of the season. He just fell off a cliff. I hope he's not having real confidence issues because that does suck. Mental stuff sucks, especially you gotta get. It's like the yips. He's missing decent shots. It's not like he's taking terrible shots all the time. And now they're becoming bad shots for all the fans watching because they're like, "What are you doing, man? Just go sit on the bench and have somebody else play your minutes, please."
It is crazy. He was one of the pleasant surprises throughout the preseason. Even those early games, he had a couple of big nights where he popped off for big.
Huge against Milwaukee.
Yes, his 3-point shot. I did not expect him to come in and shoot over 40%. I think he's still there at the moment. But every other shot, layups, floaters, pull ups, nothing has fallen. And I'm the same way. I sort of thought coming in there was a chance that it would go rough because guy who used to rely on his speed and quick first step, and now he's older and doesn't quite have that, and didn't always have it in Minnesota and Atlanta. So I'm not surprised that it's happening, but he was just so good at the start. The thing is, just like you said, I almost feel bad for Jeff Teague because the on-off splits are still really, really solid. And if anybody else was doing that, we'd be like, wow, Grant Williams is really bringing it and really impacting winning. And with Jeff Teague, we're like, he's gonna create a burner account to defend himself because Celtics fans are so vehemently want to see someone else in that role.
I remember there was a fast break layup opportunity Jeff Teague got. All I saw on Twitter was there's no shot he makes this. It was just, I was like, oh man.
Yeah, it was in the Lakers game.
Guy.
And I immediately went on Twitter. I see 5, 6 tweets oh, I'm so surprised he made that layup. Literally no one within 20 feet of him.
Oh, that's
I feel like
brutal.
he's missing all these like inside shots. So he has like no arc on his shot. And it's just rimming out every single time. He needs to just put a little bit more arc on it. Might fall for him. Pro
Uh,
tip from me to an NBA player.
I
Oh,
mean,
it's
I always feel bad, like, probably not my job to give the guys advice, but yeah, I feel like I could sit Jeff Teague down and be like, that floater needs a little bit more bounce on it, like get it a little
Right.
higher up in the air, and Tremont Waters, like I'm not an NBA player, but maybe slow down on the 35 footers, just some life tips from a guy who has to watch all this basketball.
I was gonna ask you that next. It's like I'm not like I understand the idea of the try to get yourself hot, but what was Tremont Waters doing that game? Like, just come on, man.
That
Like
was crazy.
after you missed your first three, like he's a good passer. Just like get
I
those assists going. Like what was going on? Was he just trying to get himself hot and prove to Brad that he can play, or what?
So I think there's a lot of freedom in the G League, and sometimes you just bring that irrational confidence onto the court. Like the kid does not lack for confidence, and like
Great
that's a
spin.
good thing.
Yeah.
Like you probably want your young players to operate like that, but spare me the Trey Young logo pull-ups and just run a pick and roll and find a roll man and throw it up to Time Lord or whatever. Every time I sit there and I go, oh, they can't play this guy. Then he makes that nice little baseline pass, whip around to get the dunk, and I'm thinking, okay, there's what we want out of Tremont. But yeah, I think it's just a balance for him, and like, look, I feel if I was sitting there and I only got an opportunity once every 4 games, and I needed 3 guys ahead of me on the depth chart to be injured to play minutes, I'd probably be gunning a little bit too. But it's too bad because I think he, like you said, he's dribbling, his passing, like he's got a lot of good things about his game. But if he's ever going to stick at this level, it's going to be hard because defensively, we know the situation with every undersized guard in the league. It's tough on them. You got to make up for it other ways and steals and stuff like that. And we're going to fixate on the shots. It's too bad because if you just kind of step back and let that other stuff speak for itself, maybe we wouldn't obsess so much about bad choices on jump shots.
Mhm. Yeah, it's tough, and sticking with the point guard rotation, I feel like a lot of fans were calling for Carson Edwards to get some of those Jeff Teague minutes, and then he kind of fell out of the rotation again in that Kings game. But I mean, he was looking solid before that. He made a shot. I forget what game it was. Maybe it was Golden State. Made a shot. He was driving hard to the paint. He dunked on James Harden in the bubble last year. So you gotta give him something, right?
You
Like,
know
you
what's
gotta give him
rough for
something.
Carson Edwards when like we're talking about him playing good? You're like, yeah, like he made a shot. Like he made
Yeah,
one
okay, that's
singular
not
shot.
that was not the point. I was thinking,
No, but
but
I know what you're
that's
talking
how
about.
it
He came out
sounded.
and drilled a shot, and everyone was like, "Oh man, like he
Yeah,
might go for 30 today."
when he
Like
makes the
anytime that
first
first
one.
shot goes in, Mike Gorman and Scow always say it on the broadcast, like, "Oh,
Mhm,
well, he's a different player when he makes that shot," and it's true. And
mhm,
unfortunately, it didn't really pan out.
yeah.
No, not that Sacramento game. Same deal. Like, there's a reason he's still on the roster, right? Like, shooting is so valuable in the NBA that you're going to give a guy a chance, every chance possible, to sort of find it. And every time I look at those Purdue tapes, I'm like, geez, like he
Hmm.
was a killer. And can he ever find that again? And I don't know. Like, that's tough for a young guy when you're playing spot minutes. And got in there early against San Antonio, both him and Neesmith. I was like, oh wow, here we go. Brad's going to lean on these young guys, figure out what he's got. Then they had to go to that gimmicky zone, and so all of a sudden it was like more like Grant and Shemmy out there in the second half. And so, unfortunately, that's sort of the hand they've been dealt, and they've got to wait for those opportunities. I'm surprised it hasn't. Uh, you know, I guess I'm not surprised it hasn't clicked because of the lack of minutes, but I'd like to see him get an opportunity. I think one of the frustrating things for Celtics fans is going to be if they make a move here and they send out Carson or Neesmith or whatever. If those guys start lighting it up for the Kings, you're going to be like, well, why didn't they do that here? And it might just come down to opportunity.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, Carson Edwards, like he needs to be on a bad team. He really does because he'll have more of a green light. Not that he
freedom.
doesn't have one per se here, because I know Brad really likes guys to shoot, but I mean he's got some killer players around him that he shouldn't be taking shots from. So if he's on like the Pistons and he's able to take a bunch of shots, then that'll be good for his career. But you mentioned the Kings with the trade. I know you wrote a piece on Harrison Barnes the other day. You want to talk about Harrison Barnes a bit?
Yeah. So, going into this, probably like when we first started looking at traded player options a couple months ago, he was a guy I think I lumped in there, but I think my focus was more on like Aaron Gordon, anybody from the Magic roster because they just seemed ripe
Hmm.
for an implosion. So Terrence Ross, Fournier, like Vucevic, like who could you get? Even though it's never worked down there, and that should probably be a red flag to begin with. But Harrison Barnes obviously on this trip has come into focus a little bit more, in part because he's having a great year and maybe his most efficient season of his career in terms of shooting over 50% from the floor and over 40% from the three. He's sort of ever since being the third or fourth option on those Golden State teams, he's got the big money and was supposed to be more of a focal point in Dallas and Sacramento. But I think he's ideal for the Celtics because he's someone who would embrace that situation here, where for all that went wrong with Gordon Hayward's situation, like Gordon clearly wanted to be a bigger player. I don't know if everybody wants more shots and to be a focal point, but I think Harrison Barnes understands his role at age 28 and where he is in the league. And I think he could slide in pretty seamlessly here. So Celtics with that $28.5 million trade exception could absorb his $22 million salary. It starts to descend after this season, so it makes it a little bit easier to absorb that. And he's here for a prolonged stretch alongside your core. I just think there's a lot that works. Like they clearly need another wing / four who can shoot, and he just checks all those boxes. So it comes down to whether the Kings are willing to move, right? Like, they're a team that hasn't been to the playoffs since 2006. They're on the cusp a couple years ago, ironically, when the Celtics had the Kings pick. And now I think, it just comes down to, does ownership tell Monty McNair, like, okay, we're going for it. We want to be the 8th or 9th seed and with the play-in now. And if so, maybe they don't want to move a Harrison Barnes. But I think if they're longer thinking, they're like, well, wait, De'Aaron Fox, Halliburton, Healed, if you think he's long for there, there's a really intriguing young core there that could be something, and you would give them the ability to clear max cap space for the summer, let them add a player, whatever it would be. So I just think they have to be intrigued by that.
Brutal couple years of drafting there for the Celtics too. The Kings were good, then the Grizzlies were magically good with John Morant. Those two picks just
that was so annoying, by the way. Like if you think about, I remember like before the Kings picked it up that season, like people were talking about like the Celtics could like get a top 2 pick.
Yeah,
like that was the Zion draft, and everybody was like, dude, like Zion could realistically end up with the Celtics if the Kings don't play well. Or
John Morant in Boston.
Yeah, like one thing we talked about a lot is like, Kemba's getting old, and especially he hasn't been on fire this season. People are like, well, who's going to be the next point guard? Your answer would be right there. It would be John Morant, Rookie of the Year, probably an All-Star this year, unbelievable athletic player. Like, come on, man. Like, it's so annoying when teams do that. Then the Grizzlies go ahead and do it again. Like, just be bad, please. Like the Nets went along with it, right? They were like, you know what, we're going to be bad because that's what we're supposed to do.
This is what happens when teams have sacrificed a draft pick. I'm trying to think like this year. So Dallas doesn't have the draft pick this year, right? Based on Porzingis, so they have no reason to like tank. So if they just for whatever reason they're not competitive in the West, and they have had their struggles more because of COVID and all that, but their team that's definitely not going to tank because there's no incentive. So that year, instead of situations where the Kings or Grizzlies might have downshifted, they're like, we're going for it, and that just changes everything. So poor Celtics. Hopefully Romeo and Nesmith develop into contributors, but when you look at what went ahead of them in those drafts, even just a couple spots ahead of them in that draft, Tyler Hero, it hurts. It hurts.
Yeah, Sam, a noted Tyler Hero hater too.
I would probably love him if he was here, but I think he's just like he's too much, man. He's over the top, and like he played too good too. Like he overplayed against the Celtics, and now he's not playing well, and that stuff annoys me too. He's like Middleton. Like Middleton, like just goes off for no reason. Like, come on.
So why is everyone going off against the Celtics though?
I feel like that happens all the time.
Fournier, Ish Smith, Karis LeVert. Yeah, you were at that game, right, Sam? The Karis LeVert 50 ball or whatever?
The Karis LeVert game. Oh my God, he had like 50 points. That was awful. It was a school trip, and like I go to URI, and I'm from Warwick, which is like closer to Boston than Kingston. So like I had to drive past my hometown to get back to campus to drive back to my hometown, and it was just a bummer. Like I was like, I really wasted my night. Like I went all the way there. And like I convinced my friend Tyler to go. I was like, yeah, like let's go. Like Kyrie didn't play in the first game. He's probably gonna play in this one. We'll get to rain down. Doesn't even show up. Color me shocked, man. But that was a tough night. Almost asked the bus driver for like a drag of a cigarette. That's how down bad we were that day.
Oh, brutal. Absolutely brutal scene. It's John Morant in a Celtics jersey. That's gonna be a thumbnail for this episode, by the way. That's gotta be a clickbait. Some sort of clickbait right there. But but
Chris,
yeah.
isn't clickbait enough for you, Jack?
Hey, man, come on. You gotta get the clicks anywhere you can get them. Uh, circling back around, Danny Ainge in recent days has said, he wants to add shooting with size with that TP obviously expires in a while, but the trade deadline's the day everyone is eyeing to where Danny's going to add that player. And you mentioned Harrison Barnes. You wrote about it. That is shooting with size right there. You brought up Aaron Gordon, Nikola Vucevic. Are there any other names you can think of just to throw out there?
Yeah, it's funny. I like every time they play an opponent, I sort of go through their roster, and there's like no one on the Clippers. I haven't looked ahead to Phoenix and Utah yet. Again, it has to be a team that's probably going to fall out of contention. And one of the hard parts for Danny Ainge is going to be, I don't think a lot of teams are going to be like look up by mid March and think they're out of it. Like if you're the Kings right now, you're thinking we're a couple wins away from being the eighth, seventh seed in the Western Conference. And again, maybe they're cool with that. Maybe that makes teams a little bit less willing to make moves. Now the Magic, no Fultz, no Jonathan Isaacs, like just give up. Like how many years do you want to get bounced in the first round of the playoffs? I just can't imagine that does anything for you. They're in a tough spot because now Aaron Gordon's sidelined, and I don't think that should deter anybody from being willing to take a floater on him, but it does probably diminish his value. So, it's just that's all plays into this is like how willing are teams. You need, I'm not letting Danny Ainge off the hook because I don't want another year where we're sitting here and he says, well, we were close to a deal, but we couldn't find one. Well, I don't want to hear that. Like you've got that exception. It's going to be a lot more difficult to make the move in the offseason once Tatum's extension kicks in. Just make a move, go get it and don't let it be JJ Redick. So, but like, there are other guys out there that can help them. It's just it feels like it has to be the right circumstance. And so, like the Knicks, like I'm trying to think of, like even the Knicks are playing above what I thought they would be. So it's just hard to find teams that make sense. I think we'll look up in probably the first or second week of March here and say, okay, who's really out of it? Like once that first half of the season's over, everyone's going on their little All-Star break. Who is out of it and who can you really get somebody from? And then maybe the pieces that are out there become more into focus. But Magic and Kings seem to be the sweet spots. Chicago, maybe, like I don't know what they're going to do with Laurie and all that, but that one seems more difficult.
Yeah, I know a name our friend Adam Taylor from Celtics blog brought up was Thad Young on the Bulls. Maybe that's an idea. It's just weird.
Don't hate it, but don't love it. He always another guy that always seems to play well against the Celtics. That seen him the other night, and he just always has those moments. He's another Team USA guy. I don't think he made it through the final roster, but he did get to hang out there. I always think about those guys because they have exposure with the core. I remember when I was out there before Team USA out in Las Vegas where they were doing training camp, watching Jalen and Jason go at it with Bam after practice, and Thad would get in there. So you just wonder like what the relationships are, and that probably plays into it too, who they want to play with. I think Harrison Barnes is a guy they probably would want to play with, and knowing that how much stress he can take off them and the little things he could do. So I just keep going back to him. But if they want to pay and get Aaron Gordon, or Scal keeps saying Vucevic, and I don't love the idea because I don't think he's that much of an upgrade defensively, but does hit the glass, does obviously stretch the offense would be awesome, like really sort of add a potent 3-point threat. And so I just hope it's someone like that, like an impact player that we sit here and go, oh, okay, Celtics are all in, not JJ Redick.
Not a JJ fan, I see.
I mean, I am a JJ fan.
No,
I think,
yeah.
3 years ago, it's like the Kyle Korver syndrome. Like guys just hit a certain age, and 36 seems to be the point. I guess Korver was a little bit older, but at some point that shot just goes. Like your legs just don't do the same thing. Like Reggie Miller fell off a cliff. Ray Allen fell off a cliff at around 36, 37. I just don't know. JJ defensively isn't going to help. Like I can't imagine a Kemba JJ backcourt lineup in crunch time. So it just limits what you can do.
Chris, have you forgiven Ray Allen?
What's up?
Have you forgiven Ray Allen?
I
have not.
Yeah, no,
that's why I asked.
I'm, and I'm like, I have no horse in this race. Like I mean, I grew up a Celtics fan, and I didn't like, I started covering the team a little bit during that Big Three era. But yeah, I guess I could always understand why the guys were upset. Like it's one thing to just be like, this is it. Avery has passed me on the depth chart. I lost my spot. I'm kind of mad. I want to go do something else, but then to go to the primary rival,
It's
we saw it.
LeBron. Everybody
Yeah,
hates LeBron. You don't go play with LeBron.
and
And my
so
LeBron is a bitch shirt right there. I mean,
um, it worked out for him. So I can't begrudge him too much. He got what he wanted, but hit one of the biggest shots in like
right,
finals
yeah.
aftermath, and was a big part of that. All that being said, I actually had a chance to sit down with Ray. He came to ESPN a couple years ago, right before his Hall of Fame induction. We actually were talking about the potential of him being inducted when he got, I believe, a phone call and to tell him that he was in. And I was like, "Oh, what was that?" He was like, "Nothing, nothing." Him and his wife were you could tell they were excited about what they had heard on the other end. So love him as a person. I'm a big golf guy, so we always had some good talks about golf and everything. I love his personality. I love the way he played. But like if this 2008 Celtics want to be bitter about that, I don't begrudge them.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned golf, obviously, the whole bubble thing. I'm a big golf guy, terrible at it, awful,
Yeah,
awful at
it's
golf.
okay.
It-
I'm no great thing.
no, yeah, it's just Sam is, I think, probably the biggest Celtics homer and the biggest LeBron hater I've met in my entire life. We
Wow.
met through Twitter, and it's crazy the extent. It's Sam. You want to just
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, I'm definitely a homer. Like, I feel like this team can win a championship this year. Not saying that they will, but I think they have the potential just because I think both the Jays are playing out of their mind. And if they keep it up, they are, championship caliber players. But I mean, in terms of LeBron, I don't deny that he's a great player. I just think he's got a terrible personality. I think he's a prick, man. And it upsets me so much. I just don't like the whining, and I don't like that Tatum does it either. Every time I bring it up, I'm like, Tatum's not off the hook with that either. I don't like whining, but
uh,
I think that's like the main thing. And I remember Tommy got into it one time, like really good on the Celtics broadcast, like, oh, he's crying, like the kid's crying. And my favorite part about LeBron, anytime they play
Oh
Lakers,
yes, when they put
LeBron,
him on the jumbotron.
they put him on the jumbotron and he looks up. But like also, my dad is in it with me. Like my dad is usually never into stuff like that, but he gets into it. He's like, look, he's crying, he's crying. So I love getting a little bit of rise out of my dad with that.
Oh man, so
uh,
I haven't been I haven't been to the Garden this year. We've just been in studio because of the craziness, and it's just safer and it's just
mhm.
easier for our broadcast. But that did make me miss being at games just a little bit. The idea that whenever LeBron would get that ticky tack foul, and I would look up at the jumbotron and just wait for it because he was going to look up to plead his case to suggest that he didn't foul, and oh man, the crowd would go wild whenever he actually looked up and he's just looking right back at himself. Uh, I actually, so I'll say this, like, I'm not a LeBron hater. LeBron, that game in the 2012 Eastern Conference Finals, semifinals, where he like went supernova in Game 6 in Boston, was the most amazing game I've ever seen by an individual player, and that was the point where I was like, okay, I'm not going to hate him that much because he is just otherworldly talented and unbelievable. And that was crazy. And I mean, Celtics might have a chance there to actually go on and compete for a title, but LeBron just, unlike when they made him walk off and rip off that Cleveland jersey, man, that year was insane.
Mm, brutal, absolutely brutal. And you mentioned something earlier. I'm kind of circling back again a little bit about All Star Weekend when guys take a break. What do you think about that? NBA having an All Star game, and they're letting people travel throughout the
You don't
U.S.
look
too,
thrilled.
which is like I don't get it. Like
So
what's
dumb.
going on?
Sam, I don't even know. You can't. Can you even leave Rhode Island? Like I live like sort of out by Worcester, and I love going down to Rhode Island and going to Newport and stuff like that. I haven't been to your fine state since like July, when they pretty much put up a border around it and said stop bringing COVID into our world. So I don't love the idea of the NBA just being like, yeah, go gallivant around, and as long as you're doing your daily testing. On one hand, I understand from a player's perspective, they've now been at it, if you include the bubble, for the better
Right.
part of 7 months, 8 months by that point, and guys are probably need a little bit of a mental break. But the idea of bringing all your best players in the league to the same spot, where I hope they better build a bubble around Atlanta and keep them safe, because if all these main stars then go back and are sick, optically it doesn't look great. I get the idea of, like, this is something that fans watch, and it's probably important to the league to have it. If I'm Jaylen Brown and I make my first All-Star game, I certainly want to go play in it, especially when it's going to be in his
Right.
hometown. But that's tough. Like, if I'm Brad Stevens, I don't love the idea. Here's the other thing. Every year there's an All-Star game and the Celtics have someone involved, it goes poorly. Like
Yeah.
Kyrie went and pretty much decided he was going to leave in the hallway in Charlotte. Last year, Nick Nurse played Kemba for like 50 minutes in a 48-minute game and probably damaged his knee to the point where that's not on Nick Nurse, but it wasn't great that Kemba played as many minutes as he did. And now you're going to send all your Jason and Jalen into some crazy unknown COVID situation. So I don't love it. Don't love it.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It just seems like you said, they're just sending people to go wherever they want. I saw a joke somewhere that said as soon as James Harden saw I was in Atlanta, he's gonna start playing amazing. But it's just like,
Lou Williams, like, they're all gonna be gunning for it.
it's just like, what's going on? Like, what are you doing? You spent so long trying to fix everything. You obviously had all the issues with all the teams, coming down with these health and safety protocols. You're gonna come right back after the All-Star break. It's gonna be the same thing. It's gonna be the same thing, and there's no way around it. I don't know. And obviously, Jaylen Brown is from Atlanta, so he's gonna want to play in it.
Don't
And so
want to go. That's tough.
you saw De'Aaron Fox. I don't know if you saw, like, speak out against it the
Good
other
for him.
night.
And LeBron did it last
Yeah.
night too. LeBron called it stupid. And like, so that's the thing. Like, we can hate LeBron. I do think he's pretty good when thrown into those situations and doesn't necessarily always say the PR spin that the league would want to hear. So good for him for saying what most of us are thinking. This is stupid. Don't do this. And yet they're going to power through with it.
No, yeah. I mean, De'Aaron Fox, he just, like, straight up, yeah. The money makes the world go round. So whatever works. But with that, I know there's not anything else I wanted to ask except, Sam, you have your questions that you always bring up. So
Ooh,
I'll just
that's
take the
right.
reins here.
All right. So every time we have a new guest on, Chris, I always ask like a nice series of Celtics fan questions. Obviously, you did grow up a fan, so these will
All
fit
right,
for you.
bring it.
Right. Once in a while, we get somebody like Max Letterman, who grew up a Sixers fan, so I have to change it a little bit. But the first one I always ask: do you have a favorite piece of Celtics memorabilia you have? Whether it's a jersey, sign thing, like those posters you get at the games. I think those are cool. Ticket stub, literally anything. And what's the story behind it?
So I'm like looking around. I'm in my basement right now, and I'm trying to think what I've got. That
Great background, by the way. Great
Yeah,
background.
Thank you. No,
Cool setup.
well, you can't see
I
that.
honestly thought you were at the studio.
No, God no. I have a bar in front of me. I do have I have like we for the quarantine we built even before we built a bar in our basement, thinking it'd be nice just because it used to be a kid's playroom. Now it's an adult playroom, and but the problem is like I'm trying to think what I have. I have what I'm looking at. I have a Paul Pierce
Yeah.
bobblehead that I have no idea where it came from. I have Celtics water bottles. I have a couple books. I don't have a lot of Celtics stuff. I have a couple jerseys from like random promotional events they've done. I think I got like an old school Antoine Walker jersey, which is now breathed new
Kemba.
life into it. I have more Patriots stuff that I like. Like I have a snow globe from the Snow Bowl game that I was lucky enough to be at as a fan, and so that's pretty good. I need to upgrade my Celtics memorabilia. I think my buddy across town he met Antoine at the Auburn Mall. Like our mall is no great shakes, and there's no reason a Celtics player should ever go there. But I think he got that in like a fribble at Friendlies, and so that was I need to get something on that level.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That he
I do. Well, you know what?
at the
I will
local
say this.
mall.
My favorite. I changed it for the first time in a while, but my old Twitter avatar was a picture of me and Danny Ainge at a place called Spags in Worcester.
I remember that.
So my favorite part about the photo is there's a sign that it's cropped, but it said something like they were selling like a Danny Ainge basketball hoop or something, or maybe it was just a basketball, but it was like Danny Ainge basketball is 40% off. But the way the photo is cropped, it just says Danny Ainge 40% off. And so it looks like whatever he was charging for autographs was just deep discounted, and that was the only reason that I went in and said hello. But certainly did not expect that. Let's see, I was probably like 20 years later, 24 years later, I would be covering the team that Danny Ainge runs. So I showed him that picture and said, "Look, you were important back in the day."
He
That's
still
awesome.
is.
Really,
He's
kind of.
still
He
That's
still
good.
he gets mobbed everywhere. Like he walks into a Chipotle, man, people come flying out of everywhere. Back when we could eat at Chipotle.
Yeah. That's
So
legendary.
my next thing is, do you have a favorite? I think I do moment first. Favorite moment, like ever Celtics moment besides a championship. It could be when you were covering the team when you were a kid, whatever it is, and like why.
Yeah, so I was there the night Pierce went crazy against the Sixers in like 2002, 2003. I'd have to check the dates. But me and my dad scalped tickets to a random game. And the story was we had started scalping. Again, there wasn't like StubHub back in the day.
Mhm.
So I just started working for the Boston Globe. I had a little money. I was in college, but like I had disposable income. And so we started 2001 season. We started going to every Patriots game and no idea that like literally our first game was the game Brady took over as starting quarterback against the Chargers, and we're like, oh, this is crazy. So he's really good, and they go to the Super Bowl. So we're like, we needed something after that season ended. We're like, we need a new fix in 2002. So I think we bought tickets outside the Garden for Celtics Sixers game. It was a 5-game series, so I think it was like game 4 or 5, and they absolutely throttled the Sixers, won by just like 40 points or something like that. Pierce was up on the scorers table at one point, and he was just lights out. So that's my favorite like Celtic fan moment. Back when I like cared about whether they won or lost, and now I want them to be interesting, selfishly from a work standpoint, but.
Mm.
Uh, I don't know if necessarily. I don't like the losses don't hurt as much as they used to when I was a little kid.
For sure.
That's so weird. What's that transition like? What do you think the moment was where like it really kind of flipped for you,
I
where like it didn't, the emotions weren't in it anymore?
honestly, I think it's just you selfishly find yourself rooting for storylines because like you want something to write about, that's interesting. Or maybe if I know I'm writing about someone, like secretly, I'm probably like, yeah, I hope they have a good game because I just wrote about how good they are, So that's more your motivation. I think you just sort of flip a little bit of a switch in terms of like it's a job now, and I don't always want to watch basketball on an off night. I want to watch some stupid television show and not watch the West Coast game, but you do because you want to make sure you're keeping up on stuff. But yeah, you just gotta it's easier than you'd think once it becomes a little bit of a more of a job than a fandom.
I feel like it's a whole different kind of interest, but like in a good way. In a good way.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Jack and I are kind of in it. Like, we do this, we write. We don't get paid, but
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
Unfortunately.
we're still emotionally invested. I guess that is our pay, the emotional investment, and then you get paid, and it might change a bit. But all right, so the next question is, you get to cover the team. So, do you have a favorite moment you've actually? Well, I mean, I guess you were at the Garden for the Pierce moment, but like when you were covering the team, what's the most incredible thing you've got to be there for?
Oh, so this one's easy. So, 2008, I was working at the Boston Globe, but I was covering high school sports, and then I just started probably knowing that, but where my career was going, I just started going to more different sporting events. Like I was like, can I go to the Patriots this weekend? And honestly, it was just like I'd hold up a camera and record our columnist after a game or whatever. And but somehow I got on the 2008 season. I was there for the first couple rounds. I traveled for the finals out to LA, and that was one of my first real road trips as a writer. And then to be at the Garden for that game against game 6 of the 2008 finals, and I'll never forget we were on the floor, and I managed to literally just get into the locker room afterwards somehow, even though I didn't have like the right credential to be there, and like no one should have let me in. But to be in a championship locker room when they're spraying champagne and just like the pure bliss. Again, same deal. Like was I excited that the Celtics won? Of course, like that's good for business. And but like you're looking around, and I just never thought I would be in a NBA championship locker room. And so like as much as I'm trying to just document the experience, I had a little like handy cam that we were so far ahead of our time. Like we were putting up videos, and no one was watching videos on the internet in 2008. But it was just really cool to be a part of. And then I reeked of alcohol, and I had to drive home to Worcester. So it was an hour drive home, and I said, if I get pulled over, like, what the hell am I going to tell the cops? They're gonna be like, you reek of alcohol, and so
You're just
luckily it
gonna
all
be
worked
like,
out.
listen, man, the Celtics just won. What do you want from me?
I
Like
mean,
Banner
Love it.
17 is going up in the fall. Like,
I
give me a break. You should be ecstatic. You're a cop. Most cops are into sports. You gotta understand.
I would hope
There's a
so,
connection there. I mean, I
but
go to Worcester State. I can't imagine it's a great place to get pulled over.
fair,
uh,
fair.
not great. Not great for sure.
So being in the media, you get to be in press scrums at some point of your career. You were a writer at ESPN, things like that. You ever get starstruck? And if yes, then who? And if not, then who is the best person to talk to?
Let's see. I don't really get starstruck with basketball players anymore. Like I think you just understand. Like you see them so often. Like
Mhm.
probably the first time I saw LeBron was probably like, whoa, wow, it's LeBron. Like there's definitely a moment there. Um, it's more so when we did the Cantor podcast, like his phone book of celebrities was just like overwhelming. In terms of,
Really?
he literally had every single celebrity you would ever want to talk to. He's like, which Wahlberg do you want to call? And I was like, which? Like, you got both? Like, they don't even float in the same circles. But okay, let's call Donnie, and tomorrow we'll call Mark. And so I think that was more like we called Ben Stiller one day, and just as someone who grew up on
Really?
stupid Ben Stiller films, like
Wow.
I was like totally nervous for that, and so that's just because I don't know those people as well. Like I can't, NBA players, you could probably come up with something interesting to talk about. Like, I had to go on IMDb to make sure I was referencing the right things with Ben Stiller. But I mean, to be fair, like they were all super cool, and it's a reminder that most people are normal and gracious with their time, and that was awesome.
That's crazy.
That is crazy. Cantor's not even like a superstar either.
Yeah, yeah.
Imagine like I
He's,
wonder
he's
what
good. He's
Tatum's
good.
phone is like.
That's the thing, Well, but here's the thing, like Cantor is such a like a schmoozer, and like
That's
when he
true.
played for the
Yeah,
Knicks,
he's a
like
cool dude.
all those celebrities would be in the front row, and while most people would just ignore him, he was up there dapping them up and getting to know them, and so. But like I grew up a huge wrestling fan, and he knew like the Undertaker, and he knew all like Paul Heyman and all these people, and I'm just like that's incredible to me that you just float in these circles.
It's crazy.
Former champion Ennis Cantor
Yes, for
for
20
like all 10
hardcore
seconds.
for the beat our truth, right? Very quick.
WWE. uh,
All right, Jack, I think you're up.
yes, yes. So you mentioned at the beginning of the episode, got the Robert Williams here, got all the jerseys around me. I think you touched upon an Antoine Walker one, but do you have a favorite jersey? And since you did grow up a Celtics fan, I assume they're all Celtics, but do you got a favorite one you got?
My favorite jersey it's funny, I have a pile of them. And every time we've moved or, even just moving out of my childhood home at first, I still have them. And it's the most hilarious collection of discount jerseys you will ever see. My favorite is I was big Michael Jordan guy growing up. That's why I love The Last Dance and all that. But I had a 45 Jordan jersey, which I cherish because I mean, he wore it for like 3 weeks. It's
Mhm.
just absurd that anyone would even, rush out to buy it. And it wasn't like it was an official jersey, so I don't even know where I got it. Maybe like on the discount rack at TJ Maxx after it got deep discounted. I think I had like, so that most of them are probably like the TJ Maxx special. I think I have Deshaun Stevenson, like jazz jersey. My buddy worked for the Sixers for a while, and he has these. So I think I got like an Elton Brand. I mean, there's just some really bad hodgepodge of jerseys. I don't have a lot of Celtics jerseys. I did definitely have that Antoine Walker shirt, and I got a Tatum one at an event when he was a rookie. And now that at the time, I probably didn't know how valuable that would be, but I gave it to my little nephew. Um, Although I had this conundrum, like, I have a nephew who's 8, and he wanted a Celtics jersey for Christmas, and we really lamented, like, who do we get him? Because like we get him something. Like, this was Kyrie, I think, era. So I said, well, we can't buy him Kyrie. I don't think he's long for Boston, no matter what he says. And they didn't want to go back too far, or So what we settled on, we got him a Larry Bird shirt because I just said, like, no matter
Can't go
what,
wrong.
you can wear this anytime, any place. You're not going to look outdated. But that's the trouble. Like finding the jersey that's going to stand the test of time. Like I love that you have a Robert Williams jersey, but you might have you're gonna have some explaining to do in 5 years when, like, if someone says, like, why'd you buy this? So
Oh
just,
yeah.
just be ready.
No, I mean I got Baines, Horford, Marcus Morris, Kyrie. I got it all. So
Does it say Morris Senior?
I don't know. I think it does. I think it does
That's
say Morris
impressive.
Senior,
Okay. Well, then
which
I
is.
respect that because I
I
like,
mean,
you know,
this is the third too. So
well,
what?
that's the other thing. So, like, you know, do you have Rozier?
I do.
Rozier
I
the
do.
third or just Rozier?
I think it might say the third.
Okay, that's impressive.
There was a time where he didn't have the third on the
Yeah.
jersey,
Right. So
though.
I mean that it would be fair, but like, does that? So would that be enough for you to have to go buy a new jersey?
Well, I got one in the mail. I got Shemi Ojeley, and it said Otele. They just like typed it wrong, so I had to get a new one in that sense. But
Opposite. I would own it. I would wear the
I still
misspelled.
have it. I still
Yeah.
have it. I still have it.
Well,
Jack, if
Uh,
you wore that and you post on Twitter, I bet it would people would love that.
and I
yeah,
just
people
don't reference it.
They
I
would
just
go
don't reference it
nuts.
spelled wrong.
Yeah.
do
Maybe
that
I
for me.
should.
I post that, and I will because I will definitely I will show that some love.
I will. I will. You know
I
that is.
remember I ordered an Isaiah Thomas jersey from China, like you do, and
Yeah.
literally it came in, and I believe on the front, no, on the back it looked fine. Like the green was a little dark. It was a home jersey. Like the name and lettering was a little dark. On the front, Celtics is a whole different green, and then the 4 is like the size of my hand rather than like a full size number. I was like, what am I supposed to do with this? And I was so bummed because I love Isaiah, and I was like, I finally am going to get a jersey for him. And dude, like, who made this? A 5-year-old?
Yeah, that's unfortunate. There's there's floating around
Arts
the
and
internet.
crafts.
There's a there's an Adidas neon green Celtics. It's like black with the neon trim.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I want that for an alternate at some point. I think it's a Pierce jersey, but they're nice. But yeah, I have no idea where that came from either. It's definitely not like an official Adidas product.
Oh yeah. I
Do you
mean,
like the alternates this year, Chris?
None of the recent ones, no.
No.
If either of you bought the Parquet Pride,
No, those are bad.
yeah, if you have the
Any
band,
gray jersey is bad.
I have
yeah,
that. I have one of those. I actually have one of the parquet gray ones. It's Al Horford. It's
oh,
it's not great looking.
I'm sorry. I mean, I hope you got that on a deep discount too. But yeah, no, I don't like the banners. I don't like. Unfortunately, I like, and I say this every time because invariably someone like there's really nice people in the organization whose hands are tied in terms of what they can do and how like outlandish they can get with these jerseys. I hope every time I see like San Antonio's multicolored ones or like with a little splash of those colors or anything Miami has put out, I get so jealous.
Mm. Yeah, it's great. I mean, funny enough, I get. I told you I get one of every player, right? And so my Poirier one from last year is the gold trim one. So it's just a combination of both Vincent Poirier and the gold jersey, which is well,
I don't even know if Vincent Poirier's family bought a jersey, so that is impressive that you
and
that you
then
have that.
my Javante one. The letters are just very thick Boston letters. So
That O is about to fall off.
oh yeah, it's it works though. It says Javante on the bag. It says 43, so
Right.
it's
That kills me because the back looks fine. Then you turn it around.
yeah.
It's brutal.
That's
Impressive.
great.
I applaud your dedication.
Thank you, thank you. I still got to get the 4 from this year, including one of the banner ones because I like to have one of every jersey they have. But Sam always yells at me because I just love the NBA personally, and he's a big Celtics guy. I'm a big NBA guy, so I have a bunch of other jerseys. Like I have a jersey from every team. So he
You
yells
have
at
a
me.
Kuzma jersey.
Okay,
Why do you have a Kuzma jersey?
all right, all right, all right. This was when Kuzma, like, I got it in the like Christmas of his rookie year because I was like, okay, Kuzma seems pretty cool. And it was just a meme at the time, right? Kyle Kuzma playing well, so. And now I get clowned on, which fair enough. I have a Kuzma jersey, so I deserve to be clowned on. But no, I have at least one from every team, and he always yells at me that I don't only have Celtics jerseys. So
What is your favorite jersey overall of non-Celtics?
Oh God, I have the Vince Carter purple stripes
Okay.
Raptors like, classic. It's probably got to be that one, but I mean, other than that, and that's also the first jersey I got when I was collecting them, so it's got to be that one.
Okay,
But,
I respect that. I respect that decision.
yeah, the one he gets on me the most about is I have an Embiid jersey, but he likes
No, I
Embiid.
don't. I
Embiid,
like Embiid. I don't think I gave you shit for that.
yeah, I think you gave me shit because I trashed on Embiid once, and then you said, "Well, you have a jersey, so
Yeah, maybe I did that.
so."
I
But
think
yeah,
Embiid's
I
a
mean,
stud.
I mean, with that, Sam, unless there's something else you wanted to bring up, I think that covers all the questions.
No, we can let you go, Chris. You don't
Yeah.
gotta
So
hang out with us all day.
Oh
You
my
got
gosh, I
game to
appreciate
get
it.
ready for.
That's
thank
okay.
you.
You know that like I said, When Jack came flying in from the clouds about my little joke about Carson Edwards' Twitter mishap, I felt good that someone out there got it, because if that joke had just fallen flat and got no reaction, I would have really I would have been it would have been like having a 40-point game and just being like, oh wait, that didn't count. So that was appreciated. If you all ever need anybody to come, I mean, now I'm just in awe of the jersey collection, so I will shout anytime.
Thank you,
All
thank you.
right.
I also love the sexy dishes. That was you too, right? You said that. I remember, and you said I think I tweeted at you. It was like, Dawn could sponsor the sexy dishes tape
Yes,
on
sexy
NBC. Yeah,
dishes.
that
Yeah,
was another great line. So
it
I'm
would be
glad
it would be good.
glad I could
I,
reel you in with that one.
I appreciate it. I've gone cold since. I've had nothing funny to offer, but
Ice cold.
I'll try to get back on track tonight.
For sure, for sure. But yeah, thanks again to Chris for joining us on the show. You guys can follow him on Twitter at Chris Forsberg _ But if you're listening to this podcast and not already following Chris, and you got your priorities all mixed
I don't
up,
know, man. Like, if you're not, then you guys are doing something right. Let me know.
well, we will. You guys can follow us at Bannertown USA. I'm Jack Simone, NBA, and Sam, go ahead and wrap us up.
Yeah. Once again, big thanks to Chris for coming on. It was a lot of fun to talk with you about Celtics. Obviously, love NBC Sports Boston. There's no other place to watch Celtics game. National games suck big time. I know you used to work for ESPN. It's okay. But follow Jack at Jack Simone NBA. Give Chris a follow if you don't already. And you can follow me at Sam LaFrance NBA. That's our show for today. Bye.